اتفضل دكتور زياد. Go ahead.
أنا سامعك من غير ما تخبط. أحب طبعا يعني ما أعرفش كل السادة الأفاضل الموجودين، أحب أعرف الناس بس بيا. أنا اسمي زياد بسيوني، طبيب بشري خريج 2002، خلصت امتيازي في 2003 اللي هو في فبراير 2004، خريج جامعة الزقازيق. سافرت استراليا بعد ما خلصت امتياز ب 10 أيام، كنت عامل حسابي يعني إن أنا مسافر. والإخوة الأفاضل دعوني إن أنا أتكلم على الطريق لاستراليا، سواء كان معادلات أو بخلاف ذلك يعني. إن شاء الله هحاول إن ما أتكلمش كتير، أمر مش سهل يعني، بس هحاول إن ما أتكلمش كتير. هحاول آخد 10 دقائق أو 15 دقيقة أقول فيها الوجه العام، وبعد كده أشرح، وبعد كده أترك يعني الفرصة لو حد عنده أسئلة، ده طبعا بعد موافقة المنظمين والبانل يعني. هل الكلام ده مناسب ولا؟
نعم. It's okay, of course. It's okay. Go ahead, please.
طيب، للتبسيط هشرح شوية بس عن استراليا عشان تبقى
Excuse me, sir. Can we do it in English, please?
لا، الصوت مش واضح، معلش ممكن تكرر تاني؟
Can we speak more in English, please? We have international students.
أنا سمعت international students بس ما سمعتش حاجة تانية.
ممكن نزود الإنجليزي شوية علشان عندنا international students ما بيفهموش عربي.
أنا ممكن أعمله كله إنجلش لو تحب، بس مش عايز.
لا, it's okay. It's okay. English, please.
I was just been asked by the organizers to try to speak more in English, so I'll probably speak mostly in English, and if someone's got any questions, please post it in Arabic, and I'll try to answer it back in Arabic. My name is Zeyad. I'm a graduate of medical school in Egypt. The name is Zaqazig or Zagazig. This medical school is one of the biggest in Egypt, just bed number wise. I graduated in 2002. I finished my 6th year exam, and I did my intern in 2003 to 2004. And I'd made a decision to leave Egypt when I was still in 4th year mid school. So in my intern year for الامتياز, I already passed the PLAB exam to go and work in the UK, but I had an opportunity to go to Australia. Now I work as a senior general physician. I'm a certified emergency physician. I'm also a general practitioner. I'm also a associate lecturer in 2 universities, University of New South Wales and University of Notre Dame, and these are all in Sydney. I hope my voice is clear. To try to make it simple, I'll be talking for about let's say 10 to 12 minutes. I'll try to explain the system. I'll try to explain how it is, and then I'll leave it after that to get any questions from the floor, from yourselves, if that's possible. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We'll start with Australia. Australia is a big country. It's 7 times the size of Egypt. 7 مرات. مساحة مصر. 7.7 square kilometer. Egypt is only 1.1. It's inhabited by only 22 million people. There's around 20 million Australians and 2 other millions that live in Australia, so about 22 million. In comparison, that's a quarter of the population of Egypt. Australia is a beautiful country. It's got a massive coastline, and all Australians like to live in where they like. So some of them like the beaches, some of them like the deserts, which means that despite only having 22 million, they are spread all over the country. So there is always medical need for doctors, nurses, dentists, physiotherapists, everyone needed everywhere. A bit less need within the big cities, because there's lots of doctors in the big cities, but literally everywhere else there is a need. The medical system in Australia is very much reliant on general practitioners. طبيب الأسرة أو الممارس العام is potentially the cornerstone of the medical system in Australia. So you cannot see a specialist, so you cannot go and see a pediatrician or a neurosurgeon or an ophthalmologist or anyone without the general practitioner approving that. So the general practitioner has to see you first and tell you where you need to go. That's basically the cornerstone of each part of that system. The other part of the system is the public health system. If you're an Australian permanent resident, which means if you've immigrated to Australia, or if you're an Australian citizen, you're covered by a national universal health insurance policy called the Medicare. And it covers everything that's an emergency, and it covers most of the stuff that's not an emergency. To be eligible to work as a doctor in Australia, you need to have a registration, tarkhis. Like in Egypt, you need to have tarkhis, tarkhis مزاولة مهنة, a registration to allow you to work as a doctor. And this is done through what's called the APRA. And the APRA is the definition, is basically the abbreviation of the Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Authority. So they are the regulators for any health-related practitioner who wants to work, a nurse, a physiotherapist, anyone who would like to work. To be eligible to work as a doctor, you have one of three ways. The first one is called the standard pathway, which is basically the standard way is to do the Australian Medical Council exam, al-Muadla. So what you're doing is you're trying to get an equivalency for what you've studied in Egypt and your, or let's say anywhere in the world, of your certificate of in Egypt. They're trying to get them to accept that. And this is a three-step pathway. The first one is to be able to do the Australian Medical Council exam, step one, which is an MCQ exam. It's 3.5 hours exam. It's got 120 to 150 questions. Once you pass that exam, you're eligible to set the clinical exam. And the clinical exam is 16 cases. 2 of them are empty stations, which you can have rest. So there's 14 cases. You get asked different questions. You'll be asked to perform simple procedures. You might be asked to do a CPR or, take a history, interpret an ECG, look at an X-ray. Once you pass the AMC Part 2, which is the clinical, you need to have the English testing, and the English testing is whether it's the IELTS or the OET or the PTE, or there's different ones. There is a score that's needed, which is in the IELTS, which is the most common one. You need to get 7 in each part of the exam and get 7 overall. So there's four parts of it: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Every one of those you need to get a 7, and you need to get overall a 7. Once you get those, if you do have a job offer, then the board will grant you registration depending on your status. There's too many types of registration. I really don't want to go into details, but because Australia is in need of doctors, they allow you to work if you only passed the first part. So if you did the first part and did the English test, they will allow you to work, so you don't need the clinical, and then you can do the clinical later on. And that registration is a limited registration or provisional registration, depends on where you are. And that registration enables you to work whether as a general practitioner or as a doctor in the hospital. And you need to obviously do the second part to gain general registration. To compare that to Egypt, to have a full registration in Egypt, tarkhis مزاولة مهنة, that allows you to work everywhere. That's what we call a general registration. A limited registration is what you get when you're still an intern. So they kind of treat you like an intern until you get your general registration. But it doesn't really work like this, but it's just to simplify it. So that's the first pathway, which is what we call the standard pathway. The second pathway is the specialist pathway, which is basically not for students or doctors who's just finished their medical school. We're talking about specialists. So we're talking about a radiologist, a dermatologist, a surgeon who finished their highest degree in their country and they're practicing as a specialist. They will not be asked to do the AMC exam. They cannot, you know, if you're a surgeon, you cannot really be asked about pediatric stuff. You probably cannot remember what's the temperature for a child. That's if you know it. So it's quite hard to get them to do the exam. So what they do is you have to send all your paperwork to the specific college where you've got your specialty, and they will look through it. They will do an interview, a phone interview. Most likely it'll be done over the phone, and then they will decide if what you've done and your experience is good enough to be granted specialist recognition in Australia. Just to cut the chat, if most Egyptian doctors who gain specialist degree in Egypt will not be fully comparable, but will be partially comparable, which means they'll have to spend an extra year or two in the training system in Australia, plus have to do their fellowship exam before they're allowed to practice as a specialist. The third pathway, which is for doctors who are practicing in America or Ireland or in the UK, and I'm not quite sure if Ireland is in it. Yes, so Canada, America, and Ireland, and the UK, they can potentially get through the system without doing the exams based on the fact that they've been accepted to work in these countries. So this is simply the pathway. I'll give you some examples, inshallah, in the next 5 minutes. I'll give you some examples to try to understand the system. You've just graduated from mid school this year, and you're doing your intern next year. What are your options for Australia? So number one option is during your intern year, inshallah, you'll be able to pass your English test. You do the AMC, the first part, and then you try to find a job in Australia. And when you find a job in Australia, registration, they'll get you a visa, and you'll come and work here. That's number one. Number two, you could do the PLAB and go to the UK, and once you do the PLAB and go to the UK, you get general registration and work there for a year. After that year, you can come to Australia through what we call the third pathway, which is called the competent authority pathway. So these are the options. Another example, if you're a doctor who's finished his MD in radiology from Alexandria University, what can you do? So you've got your MD, so you're a specialist in Egypt, you're a radiologist. What you need to do is you need to contact the Royal College of Radiology in Australia and download the form, fill up the paperwork, and then provide what they need from paperwork so you can do the assessment, and then they will tell you what you can do and what you can't do. صوت واضح ولا؟
شكرا دكتور. ألف شكر. Any questions from the floor? Okay. Yes, in Arabic or English, it's okay.
للأسف أنا مش سامع حاجة، فلو في سؤال يا ريت حد بس
Yes. We'll start questions.
Can you hear me now? My voice is good. Can you hear me? Excuse me, Dr. Zeyad, can you hear me? If I'm applying for the Australian board after graduating directly, and I want to apply for a certain specialist, like to go for a residency in a certain specialist, is there a different path, or just I enter the residency program as a GP and then start?
Sorry, I can't hear anything. Sorry. I can hear the voice is very distorted, so if someone can repeat the question, that would be good. I can't hear anything.
Again?
My voice is clear now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but just please try to be slow because the voice is not the best.
Okay. I'm asking if I want to apply for a certain residency program in a certain specialist after directly graduating. So should I work first as a GP, or I go to a certain residency program regarding this specialist?
Unfortunately, the voices, I can't really, I don't know what you're saying. So I think you're asking about training, is that right?
After graduating,
عيدها بالعربي.
Training program, is that right?
after me graduating the medical school?
I can't hear. So I'll tell you what I can get from about the training programs in Australia, and hopefully that would answer your question. To get into the training, the training in Australia is very specific. Each college conducts its own training, and there's no system where you can have a membership like in the UK. To be able to do the training, you have to go through the training from year one. The training is normally 5 years. You do 5 years of training, which includes exams. Could be an entry exam and an exit exam, or it could be only one exam. All colleges require two important things. Number one is the permanent residence. Number two is to have general registration. To gain general registration, as it said, if you can go through the pathway of the general pathway, then you need to do the AMC 1, the AMC 2, for the English testing, work for 1 year under supervision. At the end of the 1 year under supervision, you'll grant general registration. So that will enable you to apply for permanent residency as an immigrant. So if you come through the pathway, we call the standard pathway, we need to pass the AAC number 1, AAC number 2, the English test, work 1 year under supervision, which is 48 weeks, and has to be 8 weeks of pediatrics, 8 weeks of medicine, 8 weeks, there's certain requirements for it. If you do 48 weeks of emergency, then you will accept that. But if you're not going to do 4 years of emergency, then it has to be done as 8 weeks past. So 8 weeks in pediatrics, 8 weeks in surgery, 8 weeks in, it will be explained once you get there. And once you do this year under limited registration, you will get granted general registration. As soon as you get general registration, as a doctor, you can apply with no sponsorship for immigration, so you get permanent residency. Once you get your permanent residency, you can actually apply for the training. So you can go through the training. So the college of physicians will train doctors for physicians, and the college of physicians also does the pediatrics. So the pediatrics is a part of physicians. They have their own college, so the Royal College of Physicians, pediatric specialty. The Royal College of Surgeons was doing surgeons, and under it is the other, so under the surgeons is the surgery, urology, cardiographics, they're all part of the surgery college. The Royal College of Radiology trains radiologists, the Royal College of Emergency training emergency physicians, as you can see. You do 5 years of training, and there's an exam at the end of it, and then you get your certificate as a specialist, and then you can work as a specialist in that field.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
إذا كان في حد عنده أي سؤال ممكن ناخد منه السؤال written ونبعته عشان نسهل على الموضوع. يرفع ايده بس، أي حد عنده سؤال يرفع ايده واحنا هنيجي ناخد السؤال منه written. في هنا going on, yes.
open for any questions. If you have any questions, you can always...
Yes. There is a question from one of our students or physicians. He told you, I finish AMC 1 and IELTS, how to got a job and get visa.
So is he saying, can you find work?
Okay. Yes, he finished AMC 1, IELTS. What's the next step to do to get a visa and job?
Okay, so when you finish the AMC part 1 and then your specialty, you're eligible to work. So what you need to get a visa is to get a job offer, and a job offer that fits your experience. So you can't be a radiologist and apply for work as a general practitioner, or you can't be a surgeon and apply for work as a pediatric doctor. It's not going to work. So you have one of two options. First option is if you have general GP experience, then you go for GP work or hospital work. Or if you've got specific experience, so let's say someone has finished 3 years in surgery, then you look for surgical jobs within the hospital. So how do you look for jobs? The website, each website for each state in Australia, there's 7 states. So each state has got a website for the Ministry of Health in each state, and they have updated jobs I think they update their job web-based over every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks will be new jobs coming out. So you can keep applying till you get one of them, you get accepted by one of them, and once you get accepted by one of them, you do the registration paperwork, and then you get a visa to come to Australia and work. So that's number 1. Number 2, you can try and apply to general practices around Australia. Most of the general practices won't, but it depends on where they are. Some general practice cannot employ overseas doctors like you guys. Some of them has to employ only Australians, and that's the ones in the middle of the city. So they need to work a bit further. So you need to work about an hour away from the city, which is nothing. And if you live in Cairo, 1 hour drive is nothing. That's what people drive to go and get Asia, to go and get bread. That's the way. Look for a job. To find a job, you can contact an agent. You can apply through the website of the Ministry of Health for each state. You can try to contact friends and to help you find a job with a doctor that you know up in Australia. That's the way.
Okay, thank you. Another question. After finishing the master, what's the shortest way?
After finishing the master's?
Yes. Master in a specialty in Egypt. Master degree.
Which specialty?
Specialty. What's the specialty?
If you can ask in general about all specialties, then master's doesn't mean.
Orthopedic surgeon. Orthopedic surgeon.
Then you need to do the AMC.
Sorry?
But the only masters that can get you to Australia is actually masters of clinical pathology.
Clinical pathology.
Yes, so this is actually a twist. So to come to work in Australia as a doctor, you need to do the AMC. But clinical pathologists in Egypt can work as what they call laboratory scientists in Australia. Yes, they're not doctors, but they're not technicians. They're actually the scientists, they're actually the guys who do the work on the floor. They look like they are the clinical pathologists in Egypt. So if you were a graduate from Egypt and you had a clinical pathology master's and 3 years of experience, you can actually get immigration, you can get a permanent residency in Australia.
يا ريت.
Yes, they're not doctors, they didn't get immigration as doctors, but they've got permanent residency in Australia, and then when they came here, they did the AMC and they worked through from inside the system. But at least they have permanent residency.
Okay.
I used to say the joke, if you're planning to marry a female doctor, and then marry one that's got clinical pathology master.
Okay.
Sorry girls, I didn't mean to intimidate you.
خلاص ما انت بتجيبش اسئله بقى. Okay, another question about the difficulty of the exam and the percentage of success.
So the Australian Medical Council exam, I did the exam in 2007, and I'm going to tell you something that you might not believe, but in 2007,
the website of the AMC had
لا فلتر بقى خلاص عشان
the
الوقت.
highest number of doctors who passed from one country were Egyptians. 89% of doctors up to 2007 from Egyptian universities passed the exam in the first one. 89%, that's nearly 90%.
Okay.
So the exam is not difficult. The exam is possible. Lots of people passed it. Lots of people went through it. If I can do it, anyone else can do it. I'm not a scientist. I was never in the top class. I'm not that smart. I'm just an average guy. If I can do it, anyone else can do it.
Don't be modest, please. Okay. What's the best sites for the applying the exam and the sites for questions?
So there's a couple of question banks on the website, on the online. I think there's something called AMC Web Bank and SGQ Bank. And they're very good. But what I've heard is there is a doctor I don't know
Okay.
the person,
Okay.
but he's done the exam and he's got his own course. He gives a course in Egypt. And his pass rate is about 99%. Apparently he's only got one doctor that day. I know, I'm not doing an advertisement for him. I don't know the person himself. I don't know what's the course like. But everyone that went through the exam from Egypt with him seems to pass in the first go. He's got his own course, he's got the exam questions. So if I were you, I would try to find Dr. Amina. That's number one. Number two, on Facebook, there is a group called نصائح للأطباء المصريين للغنيين في السفر. It's initiated by Dr. Bashir, who's a doctor now working in Ireland, who's working with a medical registrar. And it's got about 70,000 members on it. And this is how I think you guys know about me. And the members have got lots of questions, there's lots of advice. If you go and join the Facebook page, it's called نصائح للأطباء المصريين للهجرة والسفر. It's got lots of answers about nearly every question you have. So there is Australia, Canada, UK, Ireland, everything. And there is tickets for exams, how to do study, how to find a study group, lots of questions. So I would suggest that you guys try those three ways. Look for the web pages with the AMC Q Bank. Number two, look for Dr. Amina. Number three, come on that Facebook page. I think you will really benefit from visiting that page.
The last question and the rest of the questions will be sent to you, sir, on your page.
So I can't read the last question. Can you repeat it again?
The last question is, what about finishing USMLE exam? Are they entitled USMLE exam? Yes. Are they entitled to work in Australia?
No. But if you pass the USMLE exam and you work in the US for 1 year, you can come to Australia with no exam. But you have to have worked in America for 1 year.
Okay. The rest of the questions will be sent to you, sir, on your page.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.